French Open, stage 18, and it's live.
Boycott at Halfords, the route to the ultimate ride.
Hello, it's the morning after the stage before on the Tour de France, which of course it is every day, but you don't often get days like yesterday on Alpe d'Huez.
Well, this is all for everyone now. The man that can knock the other one out will win the Tour de France. There's a massive, massive crowd and lines all the way to the first start of the 21 corners to heaven. There's no little ease into the Alp. It bites you straight away. It's steep, it's hard.
Cadel Evans arrived on the Alpe knowing that the attacks from his rivals would start pretty much immediately. CSC's Carlos Sastre was the first to go, and Denis Menchov went with him.
And Sastra's got Menchov on his back wheel. Here comes the kicks from the stars now. This is the moment of truth as the others drop away.
Evans couldn't, or at least didn't, follow the Spaniard's first acceleration. Sastre's fellow attacker Menchov was dispatched by the second.
Well, Menchov read the first one, but when you are a pure climber, you can do what others can't do. You can relax and accelerate for a second time.
The general increase in speed was thinning the lead group out. Kim Kirchen and Damiano Cunego among the first to crack. And suddenly Denis Menchov was behind too. 1 minute he'd gone off the front, the next he'd gone altogether.
Well, that's caught Denis Menchov. The man we thought might be holding something back is holding nothing back. He has blown on the Alpe.
In the Evans group, the fabulous Flying Schleck brothers, Frank in the yellow jersey, Andy in the white, did their double act, covering any breaks and attacking themselves to disrupt Cadel Evans' rhythm and stop him mounting a proper pursuit of Sastre.
The yellow's gone, and Cadel Evans immediately reacts.
Up ahead, their teammate was riding himself past the remains of the day's breakaway and into the race lead himself.
Fantis Sastre, I take my hat off to him. He had to attack at the bottom, and he didn't waste any time in doing it. He hit him hard.
With 4 kilometres to go, Evans, isolated and losing too much time for comfort, began the chase.
Cadel Evans, the Australian, has taken control. He knows if he's to win the Tour de France, he must not allow Sastre to get 2 minutes. Meet the man who wins an Alpe d'Huez and becomes the 7th leader of the Tour de France. Carlos Sastre gets the win. The clock has started. And here comes Cadel Evans fighting for time. They pull back a little bit and the clock will stop on Evans. We're looking at the back of the line there. I would say at 2:15.
And here's how all that translates into the top of the standings. Carlos Sastre is the new leader of the Tour de France, taking over from his CSC teammate Frank Schleck, who's second at 1:24. Bernhard Kohl, who rode well on the Alpe yesterday, is third at 1:33, and the pre-race favourite Cadel Evans is 1:34 behind Sastre in 4th place. Denis Menchov clawed his way back towards the top of the climb yesterday. He's 5th at 2:39, and it's Christian van der Velde, Alejandro Valverde and Samuel Sanchez. It was a great day's climbing yesterday and a great attacking ride that put Carlos Sastre's name alongside the previous 26 winners at Alpe d'Huez, except perhaps for the final 50 metres or so. You might think a man who really believed he could win the race would push for the line and all the time he could possibly gain, then celebrate on the other side of it. Sastre looked like a man celebrating the biggest win of his life and perhaps not expecting anything bigger anytime soon. To him, though, the moment was worth the time it took to savour.
Maybe 1 second. Just I think that this moment is once in the life, and I want to enjoy also with that moment.
I think he did what he could, so it's okay to be happy for winning today, because to win today, that was something exceptional. So it's okay. If you lose 1 second, we can live with that.
Now, you might think we're being unduly harsh on poor old Carlos Sastre. I mean, he's won the stage of all climbing stages, taken the yellow jersey, and we're questioning his decision to celebrate instead of going for 3 more seconds. But the reason is Saturday's time trial. Cadel Evans is the best time trialist of any of the remaining contenders, and although he's 4th as things stand, the computer says that he'll be back in the race lead by tea time on Saturday. Here's how Cadel Evans did against his main rivals in the first time trial back on stage 4. Over 29.5 kilometres, he beat Denis Menchov by 7 seconds, Carlos Sastre by 1:16, Bernhard Kohl by 1:20 and Frank Schleck by 1:47. Now, Saturday's time trial is 53 kilometres, and simply allowing for the extra distance and nothing else, that would produce proportionately bigger gaps. 12 seconds to Menchov, 2:16 to Sastre, 2:24 to Kohl and 3 minutes 12 seconds to Frank Schleck. And that would equal victory in Paris for the Australian by 42 seconds. With Carlos Sastre and Bernhard Kohl 2nd and 3rd on the podium, Denis Menchov 4th and Frank Schleck 5th. Now, Saturday's time trial course is hillier than stage 4, so gaps could be magnified. And of course there's pride and fatigue and the galvanising effect of the yellow jersey to factor in. And while we're all busy factoring them in, Cadel Evans is busy factoring them out.
1:35, I take it, that you have to make up on Sastre in the time trial. What's that going to take?
Good time trial.
So much for all that time we spent putting the graphics together. Here's today's route graphic, by the way. 196.5 kilometres from Bourg d'Oisans to Saint-Étienne. Stage 18 takes the race away from the foot of Alpe d'Huez and then out of the Alps altogether via 3rd, 2nd and 4th category climbs. The last of them just 8 kilometres from the finish in Saint-Étienne. So don't rule out some more attacking by CSC today to try to steal a little more time on Cadel Evans. There's the rollout at Bourg d'Oisans, the scene of a quite fabulous high-speed police convoy down the wrong side of the road to get us all away from the Alpe d'Huez last night. And there was a crash early in the stage. In it were Philippe Gilbert of Française des Jeux and the man in 14th place overall, Lampre's Damiano Cunego. He was the worse off of the two, and from the looks of things had slid face first along the tarmac. Once he'd been patched up, he had a Lampre escort back into the race, but obviously was in quite poor shape because in the end his teammates were reduced to keeping him company at the back of the race. Now, a slightly untidy breakaway today. Marcus Berghardt of Team Columbia and Carlos Barredo of Quick-Step, a German and a Spaniard, got away. There are 3 men behind them, Mikel Astarloza, Christophe Lemavelle and Romain Feyou at about 4 minutes, with the peloton another 5 minutes behind them. That's the situation as we pick up commentary on the second climb of the day.
We are looking at the 2 leaders now. Moments ago they started this big second category climb we have talked about, the Croix de Montvieux, and they're starting with a good buffer over everybody. They've been steadily pulling away from the 3 chasers. That's a good sign. Here they are as we cross the beautiful Rhone River here.
Extremely long river, but for these riders not much time to consider what's going on, because they're looking at 4 minutes to try and pull back the 2 leaders, and they haven't done anything to improve on that over the last 30 kilometres. However, they have conserved their 6-minute advantage over the front end of the main field. That distance will change, I think, over the next few kilometres. Well, these men you're looking at the front are the warriors, I think, of the Tour de France this year. Of any of the teams in the Tour who've actually tried to win the Tour de France, it's been Team CSC. They've been on the front, and whenever they've made a move, it's been a move for a strategic reason. And so far it has worked to perfection in the fact that they've got their man in the yellow jersey, Carlos Sastre, who was a pre-Tour de France leader from them, and he took the lead away from another pre-Tour de France favourite on the same squad, Frank Schleck. However, I'm not sure yet, Phil, that they've got enough time to beat the Australian Cadel Evans.
Only time will tell us the answer to that one. There's the situation at the moment. It's 4:04 to the 3 chasers, 10:01 to the peloton, and Damiano Cunego at 22 minutes.
Astarloza sitting on the front here. And he's actually a pretty good climber. Christophe Lemavelle in second position is a French rider who's been around for quite some time. And he's been in a breakaway on a number of occasions to try and get himself into a winning move this afternoon. And sitting on the back, Romain Feyou, where we've talked about him quite a lot during the Tour de France, a former wearer of the yellow jersey after the end of stage 3. And sadly for him, Phil, he had to defend it in an individual time trial.
Yes, happened to Tom Simpson when he got the jersey for one day in 1962. He lost it as well. Well, I think we might see Feliu drop off here. There it is, 13.7 kilometres. I expect Dastalose, if it gets steep enough, to use his climbing ability to get going here. Although Lumervel has climbed well in this tour, so he may be able to go with him. I think Feliu is getting very tired. That's him undoing his full racing vest there. This is the climb now. Well, it looks as though Lumervel is up for this as he lifts up the pace.
Well, Lumervel, let's not forget, was a King of the Mountains winner in the Tour de l'Avenir a few years ago. He won himself a stage in the Giro d'Italia back in 2005. And he's a rider who I think has ridden quite well through the Alps, and he's coming out of the Tour de France in fairly good condition. Although I tend to agree with you, I think Romain Feliu is the rider most likely to be under pressure here, because he's much more of a sprinter really, who can get over a few climbs, and he's likely to be the weakest man of the three at this point.
Well, we'll see how the boys manage this now. These are the two leaders here. The concentration on the big rider from Team Columbia at the back. Marcus Burkhardt hasn't won a race for a while, but he has won a semi-classic in Belgium, Gent-Wevelgem, and this is the leader now. Carlos Barredo, much better. I would think Carlos has got to try and get rid of Burkhardt, because if it came to a sprint, Burkhardt would probably win.
Theoretically, I would say that's absolutely right. Burkhardt is a great finisher. He won his Gent-Wevelgem a year ago in the sprint towards the finish line. So Barredo, though, is a very clever rider.
Meanwhile, the man from Adelaide pushes on as Stuart O'Grady has done this incredible metronomic tempo riding at the front for mile after mile, or in his case kilometre after kilometre. It's up to the riders behind now. If they want to take time out of Carlos, they're going to have to push the pace. Simple as that.
Absolutely. It's also the same for Carlos Sastre as well. If he wants to put time between himself and Cadel Evans, this might be his last opportunity, because tomorrow's stage is a much easier stage. It's an undulating stage, not necessarily a stage for the sprinters, but certainly not one where there is a climb. I'd have to say, Phil, this is the last serious climb of the Tour de France this year.
Well, let's see how they cope with it. The answer is high speed stops attacks. And you can see Carlos in his yellow jersey there, sitting at the end of a long line of riders. All his teammates, time and time again, they've really assessed themselves as the best team in the race. Gap-wise, they are bringing the leaders back with the fast tempo rider here. They've got down to 9:39 now. And they're not going to close that gap before the finish. But will the other three? What's going to happen to those three? And it's always a battle for the inside anyway. So as we get into the climb, the big question is, can anybody try and get time on Carlos Sastre?
Welcome back to Saint-Etienne. Now, sport can divide people right down the middle. You either like to see an open competition with no one outstanding candidate, like this year's race for the yellow jersey, or you prefer to see an exhibition from a great champion who simply dismisses the opposition. Well, the last man to do that on the Tour de France was, of course, Lance Armstrong, and the man who knew him better than any was his former team manager, Johan Bruneel. A couple of days ago, I sat down with him and he told me all about those 7 consecutive wins. I want to take you back to 1999. Armstrong, as far as people knew at that time, wasn't anything like the greatest rider on earth. And you were a very young director sportif.
I had this, strong belief that Lance could win the Tour, because I had seen something in him that has changed since he came back after cancer. He won the prologue of the Tour in '99, and then he won the first mountain stage. And basically from there on we just lived it day by day, because we were a small team and we were not really ready for that big challenge. And it was a big relief when we got to Paris.
What was Lance like back in '99 as a person, as a character? Because we got to know him so well over those 7 years as this steely, determined character.
And he was very, very meticulous about the whole plan and about the training. And he didn't change a lot over those years, I have to say. He got more experience, but as a person, and his mindset was basically the same all of those years. That's the way he is.
One of the characteristic things about Armstrong was the way he rode up a mountain, that high cadence, skipping motion of his that was so distinctive from so many other riders.
He was that powerful rider. He had the power, but he had also the ability to really spin the legs. And I thought, we have to invent the most efficient pedaling style, which in my opinion was spin when it's necessary and only use the raw power when it's really necessary. And that's ultimately what became his trademark. And it cost me a lot of effort and sweat to get that automatically in him. The stage in Toulouse-Ardiden, we had a 15-second lead on Ullrich only, and before the stage. And you know, knowing there was a time trial still to come, we know that day we had to do it. When Lance went down, I said, "This is it. You know, there's no way. Maybe he has broken something, or he can't get up again." And but that day, I mean, he did something which, in my opinion, he wasn't physical able to do that. And he got so much adrenaline. He came back and he attacked and won that stage and took about a minute on Ullrich. That was one of the most impressive performances I've seen from Lance. I have to say that the last two Tour de France, for me personally, it was only about winning the race. The rest around it was not really fun anymore. You get tired of everything, and they got tired of Lance winning, and we got tired of them always getting after us. And you know, we became a kind of, you know, like this. We started to live in our bubble. But at the end, you know, we tried to use these things to our advantage. And you know, when you're able to win in an atmosphere where almost everybody wants you to lose, that's a good motivator, and it was definitely a good motivating factor for Lance. I think the Tour needed Lance, because I think the Tour has grown a lot because of Lance Armstrong.
Now, part 2 of that Johan Bruyneel interview coming up tomorrow, in which he talks to Ned about Alberto Contador and Astana. Back on the road in today's race, the two leaders are still out front.
1 kilometre to go on the final second climb of the day here. There is a third cat to come. There's no change in the race at the moment. These two riders, Burkhardt and Barredo, leading the peloton by 10 minutes as they are now at 5 to go.
Well, there's a massive gap, so obviously there's no major challenge, I don't think, going to come from Team CSC or Carlos Sastre on today like today. I think they're just going to try and take this race as it is, a status quo over the summit of this climb.
What a marvellous crowd this is here on the Mont Vieux. And it really has. They've managed to get in on this one from somewhere. No cars there, so they've had to walk to it. And they're witnessing the two leaders who've led today since they came together, and since the 68th kilometre for Carlos Barredo, since the 80th kilometre for the pair of them. And they are now coming up to just 33 from the finish.
Yeah, once they go over the summit, so they've got a fairly good descent field down into the valley, and then it's that little climb up to the outskirts of Saint-Etienne, and still no real sign as to which of these riders is the strongest. Barredo decides he's going to get himself maximum points and a few extra euros into his back pocket as he goes over the summit of the climb.
Yes, no race for the king of the mountain points. They're not interested in for either of them, and I think Barredo's done a lot of work on that climb. So Burkhardt wasn't going to do anything about that.
What about that for a crowd here? This is a small climb almost in the middle of nowhere in the heart of France, and there's thousands of spectators have turned out to see the three-man chase group coming through here. It's as if, Phil, all of the spectators have come from the Alps to continue with the excitement of the battle we've seen for the victory of the Tour de France this year. The Aussie flags are there, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of Spanish flags as well turning out for the final individual time trial, with nobody really knowing who is going to get the better of the race for the yellow jersey.
Well, the time trial is on a Saturday, of course. Not that it seems to matter in this part of the world. Everybody seems to be permanently on holiday. But this Saturday, we can expect an awful lot of people on the time trial road. And because those people will witness the man that goes to Paris as the winner of the Tour de France. And it's not certain. This is the chase coming up as they continue towards the summit. All the tempo now being done by a climber, Mikel Aftalosa. I bet you Christophe Lemervel might give him a run for his money, though, when he sees that banner.
Absolutely, the two riders have gone over the top. It's a second category climb, so there are points for the first 5 riders over the summit. As we look a little bit further back, Romain Failu, Phil, I think, will be quite happy when they get to the summit of this climb, because he will then realise that they've got a pretty good chance of survival. The main field, I don't think are going to chase at all, Phil, because they're still locked in at 10 minutes, and they may well wait until tomorrow to see whether or not there's going to be a surprise attack. But it may well be now that what we're waiting for is the final showdown in the individual time trial on Saturday.
Looks like the local cyclist from Parramatta there, which is just on the suburbs of Sydney, was waving that flag. They had the plaque up. No race at all over the summit. Up goes the zip, 4:14 the gap. And so they have lost a little bit on the climb, nearly half a minute. as Astolosa takes them over. Plenty of work being done by the local farmers though. The insignia of the Tour de France, 42, is the region number. We are now in the department of the Loire.
Just checking down at the livestock, and nice to see them over there on the right hand side and keeping away from the hay.
All that food down there, they must think it's Christmas.
They must think it's Christmas, absolutely. The two leaders probably think it's Christmas, but only one of these guys is going to get a present this afternoon, and it's difficult to pick a winner from these two, I have to say. Phil Marcus Burkhardt won himself a Gent-Wevelgem last year in a very good sprint. But the question is, how much work and how much energy has he left on the roads of the Tour de France? The gap at 44 kilometers is around about 10 minutes, and they're estimating the gap at the finish is going to be around about 4 minutes.
Well, this is a big moment for the peloton. They've seen 1 kilometer. They can tick off another climb of the Tour de France, and not a pedal turned in anger here. We thought they might have tried something, but they haven't done so, which means that they're a day nearer the time trial and no more time gained or lost by the respectives, which means that it could be coming down to the race of two. 25 kilometers to go for the two leaders of today's stage of the Tour. It wasn't an easy breakaway to build this one, but now they've got it. They've got a 10-minute, 8-second buffer, and the three chasers in the lead, behind them rather. They're 6 minutes ahead of the peloton, but they're still 4 minutes ahead of behind these two.
Yeah, just to explain,
a nasty bend.
It's a very nasty bend. Just to explain why I think these riders are going to stay clear, Phil. After the summit of the climb, the Croix de Montvieux, they've got a long descent going down into the valley below, which is not an area where they're going to lose any of their advantage. And then basically once they get to Saint-Chamond, they've only got 15 kilometers to go to the finish. A small amount of that is uphill, the rest is totally flat, and I don't think the main field have got the power this afternoon to pull them back.
Well, we saw that dam there. That was the Dorley Dam, which is fed by the Dorley River, which is a main tributary of the River Gier.
Dam was built in 1973. The French really are the experts in conserving water and using it to generate power. But what is interesting about the use of water in France is whenever they build a new hydroelectric dam or a hydroelectric scheme, they always have to put an evacuation water, a slipway, and that slipway has to be related to a canoe and kayak whitewater rafting course as part of their promotion of the sport.
Cyril Dessel, who's distinguished himself on the Tour de France this year with a win in the Alps. So they're all happy with that French rider now, giving the French 2-stage wins. And by the look of it, no chance today of an additional third.
David Miller over on the left-hand side with the blue shoulders to his jersey, and that's to look after Christian Van der Velde, who is right up behind him. Van der Velde not taking any risks at all, which is why you can see him riding up at the front end of the main field. I've got to say, Christian Van der Velde, Phil, yesterday was absolutely superb. He rode at the front end of the main field, but he was not scared at all of attacking either.
So the peloton are over the top. The gap is still 10 minutes. The two up front, I think, have got this one today. Hello and welcome back to our coverage of the Tour de France today here on ITV4. And welcome to the commentary box. Well, the last few days we've been in the high mountains. Slightly easier road to St Etienne today, and a chance for us to catch up with your emails. The first one coming in from Dave Weeks. You mentioned going into the red zone quite often. Can you explain what you mean?
Yeah, pretty much like when you get into your car and you're pushing the rev counter into the red zone, it's damaging the engine. For a professional cyclist, what it means is you're going into oxygen debts or you're starting to produce lactic acid, which pretty much means you've come to the end of your tether.
Right, another question then. Lots of people are asking how long it took for Carlos Sastre to climb L'Alpe d'Huez yesterday.
Actually, it was 39 minutes and 30 seconds for Carlos Sastre, but there's an unofficial record for the ascent of Alpe d'Huez, which is attributed to Marco Pantani, and that's 36 minutes and 50 seconds. But it is arbitrary and unofficial because it was actually done by going back and looking at old videos, footage of the actual ascent.
Yeah, there's no white line on the road as you start the climb of the Alps, so you really do estimate it, I suppose. Now, Ronnie Spraggs, we've enjoyed reading all of the emails you've been sending us these past 3 weeks of the Tour de France. Sometimes I think a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but we have picked one out, and it's a question I want to know the answer to anyway. And it's directed at Paul Sherwin, and he says, is it true that when Paul Sherwin was riding the Tour and performing his heroic solo chases, he had an African witch doctor in attendance to treat him with bush medicine and to cast evil spells on the opposition?
No, not at all, Ronnie. There were no witch doctors around when I was trying to get off the front end of the main field at the Tour de France, but I've got a little spell for you. Hamjambo mabwana na mabibi, we Ronnie, apana cheza na mimi.
Goodness knows what he said, Ronnie, but he does speak Swahili fluently, and he does normally live in Uganda. All right, now again, many of you have enjoyed the fine scenes of the Alps from the helicopter camera, so we thought we'd give you a minute here with the original theme music from the Tour.
And here is a banner indicating 15 kilometers to go to the finish. And these two riders, neither of them really trying to play anything silly or outfox the other one by not working. They're both sharing the pacemaking in a race that's seen a dramatic crash at the back by Damiano Cunego.
And there we have now the riders here. Well, there's two riders in the lead. I think they'll stay away, but there is that little springboard before we go over the top down to the finish.
Yes, I have a feeling that that may well not be a point where these two riders are going to try and separate themselves for, because after all, they are both extremely tired. They've been at the front of this bike race for a very long time, and they've both pretty much shared the pacemaking, although Barredo will be getting that little bit more nervous because there's a lot of pressure on him trying to get the stage victory for Team Quick-Step.
Well, they've no fear from the peloton. At 10 minutes 15, it'll be an in-fight there if they want to snatch a few seconds advantage and take it away from Carlos Sastre. Might make a rough ride to the finish for him, but as far as the stage winning and honours go, this is the town of Saint-Chamond. It's the sprint here, no sprint. Berghardt goes through first and Barredo in second.
But the time gaps are still pretty much locked in at what they have been for the last 20 kilometres. 4.5 minutes to the three chasers and 10 minutes to the main field.
Up at the front as we go through Saint-Chamond are the two leaders of the Tour. They've been a long ride together. Both are going to want to win this stage. Both want to nail their reputation to the west.
The three chasers now, while the leaders are looking at around about 11 kilometres to go, the three chasers now are just going to go through the 15 kilometre to go sprint point. And there's Romain Feliu. Feliu looks pretty tired there, the way he's getting out of the saddle. And Lemervel just takes up second place. I take my hat off to Romain Feliu. He's probably the weakest rider in this chasing group of three, but he's still prepared to do a little bit of pacemaking just to make sure that they stay in front of the main field, and they're not far away now from the next climb.
10 kilometres to go for the two leaders. Marcus Berghardt in the lead at the moment, followed by Carlos Barredo, the way it's been for much of the day today, and they've kept all of the lead. It really has never looked like coming back, this.
Well, just looking at the pedalling style of Marcus Berghardt there, Phil, he looks pretty good. He looks nice and supple, and I really cannot pick a winner from these two riders. I would think probably Carlos Barredo is the man likely to get the victory because he will be that little bit more motivated than the man with him. Although when it comes to winning a stage of the Tour de France, it's very... Oh, that's a little bit close.
I was just thinking that. He wanted Berghardt to come over, but he slowed down. He's flicked his arm, saying, come on, it's your turn. I don't know. This is a little slight rise here, and we're not yet on to the final climb of the day, which is not a great climb, but we're very close to it. In fact, we might well be coming up towards the summit here. It's only a shallow climb, and neither rider... Yes, the Côte de Sorbière, that's what it is, and it's a kilometre to go.
Just a kilometre or so to go to the summit, so they're both still pretty much locked together. It's not a difficult climb, and both of these riders, let's not forget, having led the race now, Phil, for about 120 kilometres, will be both feeling a certain amount of fatigue. A little flick of the arm there from Barredo. I think Barredo is playing the the clever character at the moment, trying to get as much work done now by Marcus Burkhardt, who's still got a very high cadence. And the fact that he's got that high cadence would be an indication that his legs are still fairly fresh. As you start to get a little bit more tired, you lose the ability to turn your legs quickly.
He's alert here. Burkhardt is expecting Barredo to try and accelerate here. They're fighting out the sprint for the line, not too sure why, but I think Barredo might have been planning a little attack there, and Burkhardt was up for it.
And Burkhardt was ready. You saw him just change his gear up a fraction. That was so that he could respond quickly. He's got himself onto the inside chainring, while you can see that the Spanish rider is on the large chainring at the front. He's using a much bigger gear. He's very powerful. And I have to say that Burkhardt looks pretty fresh there. The fact that he can still turn his legs as quickly as that is an indication that he's still in pretty good form, although this may well be a psychological move.
This was the plan, and Burkhardt gave him the chance, but he was ready for it. He's in the gear. This is not an attack for the top of the climb. This was meant to be an attack to win the race.
Well, it's a big move there, but you notice almost immediately Burkhardt was straight onto the big chainring, and he hasn't got the gap at all. And that would indicate that Carlos Barredo is concerned about the speed of Marcus Burkhardt on the run-in towards the finish. It was a good move, but now, how do you work together with a guy who's just attacked you? That's what happened. You see, for 60 kilometers, 120 kilometers or so, they've been mates. They've been working together to keep the three chasers away from them. Then all of a sudden, that attack breaks the Entente Cordiale.
Well, the friendship's there. They're looking at each other, trying to psych each other out here. There's still 8.5 kilometers, 5 miles to go to the finish. Burkhardt knew there was something afoot here. He was ready for that, and he was in a low gear, making the acceleration very quickly into the slipstream there of Carlos Barredo. Barredo kept that big gear rolling, but it hurt his legs in the end, and it cost him. And you're not ready for that one. He was looking the wrong way. He's trying everything he knows, this man. And again, Burkhardt is looking very strong to jump on his back wheel. And he's lost that one too.
Barredo hasn't got it, Phil. He hasn't got that acceleration. It was a very clever move. You notice that Burkhardt looked to the opposite side. Then all of a sudden he's gone again.
Well, this is the third time he's attacked, and they say the third time is it if you don't answer it. But again, Burkhardt is not troubled. The hill wasn't quite hard enough for the Spanish boy.
No, it certainly wasn't. And they're both back together.
So they are all together again on top of this climb. 8 kilometers to go. Well, this is one of Burkhardt's greatest moments on a single stage of the Tour de France, a chance of a stage win, and that would be a terrific result for him anyway, and great for the team who've done nothing and are being criticised for it in the Belgian newspapers. Oh, and he's gone again. The minute we cut away, but this time it is Burkhardt who has gone, and Barredo is going to have to be put on the defensive here. And now that is how you launch an attack. He's making Barredo work so hard here.
Well, he's probably got a little bit fed up by the fact that the Spanish rider had hit him hard 3 times in succession, and now his legs are really pinging. He's looked over his shoulder, he's got a little bit of a gap, but Barredo is clawing his way back to the wheel. I think Barredo has got this one covered, Phil.
He's got this one covered, I think, yes, for around that roundabout, but if Barredo thinks he's got it covered, then he might lose the gap. But I think this time he'll nail him back. Now, there's no friends left up here now. They're not going to trust each other. So you can watch behind. The time will start to drop down. That was how it happened. Good move there and a perfect way to attack. Barredo was calling it through to do the work at the front, and Burkhardt decided to try one. We're looking at the 3 chasers here as they try to have their own private battle over that little climb. Meanwhile, up front, goodness knows what Barredo is saying. Let's have a look at their faces. They're just trying to reach an agreement to help and work to the finish and then sprint it out, would be my guess. Now, where are we now? We're back in the bunch here. This is an attack by the Cofidis rider. It's Samy Dumoulin, the little man in the race, who's trying to launch on this last climb of the race today.
Further up the road, these two still locked in their own personal battle, 10 minutes ahead of the main field. 2 kilometers to go. In around about a kilometer, Phil, they will come to the Andrei Kivilev roundabout, and then they will face 3 or 4 nasty little bends, while a little bit further back it is Kreuziger who's got away, and I'm pretty certain
Schleck who's coming across. Yes, it is. He's got the reaction because he's only 13 seconds ahead of Kreuziger, and so we did get an attack for the few seconds.
Well, that's a very good move by Andy Schleck, and Andy Schleck is going to not really ruffle too many feathers in the group, Phil, because he's 10 1/4 minutes in arrears, but here he's trying to make sure he keeps himself in contact for the race for the best young rider.
Meanwhile, back in the race for the sprint here, these two are just giving no quarter now.
Getting a bit nasty now when you start zigzagging like that. If you get it wrong, you can cause the other rider in the group with you to come off, and I wouldn't like to see that after they've been great friends. They've worked together to build up this lead. They've got over the chasers, Phil, and over the other riders in the main field. So now they need to just have a safe, straight drag strip sprint to the line. This group now, though, is actually going to move away from the front end of the main field and just getting on the back there. There was a quick glimpse of Leif Hoster. Now he's thinking about just marking the Andy Schleck.
He's
1 kilometre.
He's the Cadell policeman been sent up there to watch what's going on in the stalls. 1 kilometre to go, and they haven't rid each other, so it's going to be a sprint, or somebody has got to hit the surprise button, just shaking the lactic out of the big legs of Marcus Burkhardt. This is the left-hand turn where they took all the traffic furniture out, just on the right there. They're riding through it now.
And they won't see the finishing line until the very last moment. There's a left turn, a left turn, and a left turn, or they're really basically sweepers. After a long breakaway like this, you've got to back off the sprint, and I think Burkhardt has got to wait a fraction. He's got to lead the sprint out. He's got the power, I think, but once he gets the jump, I don't think Barredo will be able to come out of his wheel, and that's what Barredo is banking on. Barredo will try and be the rider to jump first and get the surprise, but probably not until 200 or 300 metres to go.
Well, the American team Columbia taking on the Belgian team of Quick-Step. As they now go towards the line here, anybody can make the move. It is, in fact, Marcus Burkhardt, a German, against the Spanish rider Barredo. They are so tense here, they're going to make this a very late dash for the line. 500 metres.
They're looking round the corner. They haven't yet, Phil, quite seen the finishing barrier over the line now. Burkhardt decides to wind it up. He's challenging the Spaniard to come over the top. Come on, mate, you start the sprint first and I'll respond. Barredo has to wait until the very last minute. 400 metres to go.
Well, this is the slowest sprint we've had since the Tour de France began. They both want this stage for different reasons. Barredo slightly the advantage of surprise here. He just keeps looking at his man. We could be on the velodrome in a World Championship track sprint now, as these two riders are so twitchy, but they know they'll get one shot and only one shot. Barredo is trying to nudge him to make the attack. Now they've gone for the line, mano a mano, side by side, but I think Marcus Burkhardt is going to be a little bit too quick here. The man who's helped Cavendish to all of his wins now gets one for himself. I'm not surprised Barredo is so upset, but really against Burkhardt, Paul, he had no hope.
Well, he tried every trick in the book there, and he could do nothing to outwit the German. Burkhardt getting another great win for Team Columbia.
Yes, 5 now for the sport's newest sponsors, 4 courtesy of Mark Cavendish, of course, and an easy win in the end for Marcus Burkhardt after all the false starts, ahead of a furious but well-beaten Carlos Barredo. Behind them, Romain Fayou beat Christophe Lemavelle and Mikel Astalotha in the sprint for 3rd. There you go, Burkhardt, Barredo, Fayou, Lemavelle, Astalotha. The result, Germany, Spain, France, France, Spain. And in the next mini-group behind them, Andy Schleck, and the only man close to him in the young rider competition, Roman Kreuziger.
As they head up to the line, this will be the race then for 6th place today in the white jersey of the best young rider of the Tour de France. Andy Schleck leads the 2nd best placed young rider, Roman Kreuziger, who won the Tour of Switzerland just before the Tour de France began. 2 strong young stars of the future heading home towards the finish today.
Well, Cyril Dessel has already got himself a stage victory in the Tour. He'll try and lead home if he can, but Samy Dumoulin, in theory, in the red shorts of Team Cofidis, is the fastest finisher, but it's going to be Andy Schleck leading them to the line.
So Andy Schleck comes, but watch out, Roman Kreuziger, Dumoulin forcing it through, a little bit of a kick. The man that won at Nantes in the first week of the Tour de France is sweeping up for the French today, and he gets home in 6th place.
And here's the main field, and after all of that chase over the last few kilometres, it didn't really give very many people a great advantage. And across the road, it's the sprinters, Zabel, Hushoft and Oscar Freire.
Freire got the sprint from Zabel and Hushoft on the line. So more points in the bag against his main rivals in the green jersey competition. That is going to be Oscars in Paris for sure.
Andy Schleck less short of the white jersey though, that'll go down to the final time trial. He finished 10th, all the names you'd expect finished in the main field too, 6 minutes 50 behind the winner. Chris Froome was on the other side of a small split in a group at 7 minutes 07. 20 minutes after the winner across the line, the day's crash victim Damiano Cunego came over with 4 teammates for moral support. He felt good enough at least though to explain the accident.
Ma guarda, è stato veramente sfortunato perché mi sono infilate le ruote in una canaletta, ho fatto un volo che è già un miracolo che sia qui.
Ci dispiace tantissimo, ma tu vuoi rimanere?
Speriamo di essere in tempo massimo almeno. Ringrazio i miei compagni che mi hanno aspettato perché a un certo momento ce li siamo visti veramente brutta, non si rientra nemmeno, ho detto, e alla fine dai, io ci ho creduto. Adesso non so che condizioni sono acciaccato dappertutto, spero almeno di essere in grado di ripartire per domani.
Well, today's stage winner can sympathise. Marcus Burkhardt was taken down by a dog in last year's Tour, but he's got his stage win now, all apparently because of a new piece of kit.
Yeah, today, yesterday in the dinner, Rolf said to me I have to wear a new jersey, maybe it will bring luck. And so I had a new jersey today and I had really a lot of luck with this new jersey.
Well, Marcus's magic jersey had no real effect on the standings today, not at the top anyway. It's still the CSC pair of Carlos Sastre and Frank Schleck ahead of Bernhard Kohl, Cadel Evans, Dennis Menchoff, Christian van der Velde, Alejandro Valverde and Samuel Sanchez. Roman Kreuziger's little late stage surge did nothing to get him any closer to Andy Schleck, still 1 minute 58 between the rivals for best young rider in 12th and 13th. Damiano Cunego is now down to 20th after his crash. So Carlos Sastre will spend his second day in the yellow jersey tomorrow before swapping to a yellow skin suit for Saturday's time trial, where he'll be racing against the clock and Cadel Evans.
Well, Cadel, did everything go to plan today?
Yeah, no surprise attacks, no crazy, a bit nervous at the start, accidents and so on, but yeah, just another day.
How are the legs today?
Oh, okay, but doesn't matter today, it's Saturday that's going to count, but we're not there yet.
Carlos, I know you work very hard on your psychology in Team CSC. Is there anything you can do to put pressure on Cadel Evans before the time trial?
No. Just, I think that the last time trial is the power as you have, or the energy as you have, or you keep after all the Tour de France, you know. And honestly, just, we work really hard for get that advantage. We have, or I have what I have, and I will fight with that, you know. I don't spend too much energy just thinking in the time trial. If I can beat him, if I can win, if just I try to enjoy with the moment and. Just when we have the time trial in front of us, I will fight for that, and that's all.
Well, whatever Bernhard Kohl does in the time trial, he's already had a brilliant tour. With the race now out of the Alps, he's confirmed as the 2008 King of the Mountains. So the first jersey of this year's Tour is decided, and Bernhard Kohl, of course, still in with a chance of making the podium in Paris. However, our third and final competition prize, by way of a seamless segue, is still up for grabs. Right, just 362 kilometres left on this race now, 165.5 of them tomorrow from Rouen to Montluçon. There are a couple of climbs early on in the stage, 2 intermediate sprints that will most likely be wiped out by the day's breakaway, and a flat finish in Montluçon for a bunch sprint if the breakaway's been caught. We'll have highlights of stage 19 for you at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Don't forget itv.com/tour, where you can send us emails and download the daily podcast. So, on the face of things, the race is all set to roll along steadily tomorrow, produce a happy but harmless stage winner from somewhere down the classification, and leave things absolutely unchanged at the top going into Saturday's decisive time trial, which of course is exactly the kind of confident prediction that's usually followed by some cataclysmic race change on what's supposed to be a quiet day. We haven't had many quiet days on this year's Tour de France, so who knows what stage 19 will bring. Whatever it does bring, we'll bring to you tomorrow night at 7.